Thanks so much to all my patrons. Join now to help support the channel and help pick the books I review on this channel. Link in the description. Hey everybody, so it is time for an update to my worst popular fantasy books that I've ever read list. And this is always a pretty popular video. You guys just love negativity apparently, but I'm here to give it to you because I got some thoughts. And there's a lot of changes to this list from last year. So let's start with number 10, and it is Dragon Haven by Robin Hobb. This is the second book in the Rainwild Chronicles, which is in the wider realm of the Elderling series. And my God, is this bad. Now, this isn't the most controversial opinion in the world because, this is a 16-book series, Realm of the Elderlings, and this quartet of books that sits kind of towards the middle, back half of the series is kind of commonly looked at is the weakest of the bunch, but I was not prepared for how bad this one was. We've got this very adult series in Realm of the Elderlings, kind of a character study, mainly of this one character that grows up through time, but it does not hold your hand. It's very mature. And then you get this book, Dragon Haven, and the one before this was not great either, Dragon Keeper, I think it was. But this just felt like a YA romance story where literally nothing happens in the book. And I'm not really, going crazy with that statement that nothing happens, but it's about a group of characters going from point A to point B. You know they will get to point B. They're doing it. Not a lot happens between A and B, and it's just this really angsty group of kids, and it just feels like something that's totally, totally out of left field. I hated everything about it. I will do a reread of the series eventually, and you can bet your bottom dollar that I'm never going to be reading this one again. So if you love this thing, more power to you, but I don't get it. Number 9 is a little bit more controversial, and by little I mean a lot, and it is The Lost Metal by Brandon Sanderson. This is the final book in Mistborn Era 2, and yeah, I feel like I'm the only person on planet Earth that hated this thing. I just thought it was atrocious. Granted, I did not like Mistborn Era 2 in general. I thought it was very weak. I felt like it didn't need to be written. I know it didn't need to be written, quite frankly, because it was never planned to be written. Mistborn was supposed to be this set of 3 different trilogies, where one of the trilogies is, far, far long ago, and then one of the trilogies is more kind of modern day, and then the final trilogy is in the future, all dealing with this one planet and the events that surrounding it. It's a really cool concept. Well, Sanderson got a little sidetracked, as Sanderson can do fairly easily, and he decided to write a whole quartet of books, not just a trilogy, but a quartet that takes place in between the first and what was going to be the second era, but now is the second era. And it feels like that by the end of this thing, because the story did not progress. We got to learn about these characters that aren't going to be relevant later on, because each of these major trilogies, or now this one too, deals with different characters in the same world. So yeah, it didn't need to be written. It felt like the bad guy got thrown in right in the final book. That was just kind of a teaser for the next trilogy that does need to be written. And, that the tie-ins to the Cosmere were, while I think they're cool when they're tied in, this just felt like it was like a word vomit of Cosmere tie-ins that made it feel like it was trying way, way too hard to be like a Avengers movie, tying in all these different things, and it was just too much. There is a amount that can be done for it to be palatable and even welcomed, and this just missed the mark entirely. The humor was cranked up to 11, and cranked up, and I hated the humor. I think Wayne is just this. I get why he is the way he is. He's like this depressed guy that uses humor to try to lighten things up. I get it, but the humor, that still doesn't make the humor hit. And the fact that he's trying it left and right, I mean, there's nothing worse than failed humor, right? Especially when it's just routinely done. I get the sense that Sanderson thinks he's really funny. No. Number 8 is controversial to some spheres, probably not this one, and it is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. This is book 1 of the Empyrean. I don't even know why I say that. Nobody knows of this as Empyrean, probably not even Fourth Wing fans. They just know it as like the Fourth Wing series. And yeah, I think the bigger surprise here is that I actually read this. I ended up reading it because my wife read it, and I promised her that if she ever read a fantasy book, I would read it as well. She decided to finish this one. I read it, and I did not like it. It's mostly on this list because it's like uber popular, and these are the worst of the mega popular ones that I've read. I certainly hate other things on this list more, but I disliked pretty much every aspect of this book. And I'm not surprised by it. In fact, I thought I would hate it more. There were aspects here that I thought were okay, especially in the first kind of portion of the book. But as it went along, it just turned into this romance story. And I'm not really into romance stories. It felt like the fantasy aspects to the book were not fleshed out. It had a lot of obvious questions that needed answers. Didn't feel like I cared about the characters that much. The magic system was very basic. I don't even just mean magic. Like, the world was very, very basic in the fantasy sense. I probably would have liked this thing a lot more had it been one of the earlier fantasy books that I've read. But I've read a lot of fantasy up to this point, and I know what I like, and I know what I don't like, and this is not my thing. And yeah, I think it hurts it that I've read so much before this. That it just kind of felt cookie cutter in so many ways. And then it had this pretty intense relationship, not even love triangle, but, you know, I love this guy. Oh, wait, no, I love this guy. And I love the bad boy. And, you know, even though I should have probably liked this guy, but now I like this guy. And very intense sexual scenes that are uncomfortable for me to read. And yeah. Not my cup of tea. Number 7 is The Gunslinger by Stephen King. This is book 1 of the Dark Tower series. One of the only reviews that I've ever done where I actually lost subscribers because of the review. And yeah, Stephen King fans, man, they love Stephen King. I'm not one of those people. I don't hate Stephen King, but I've never really loved one of his books. I think I've read like 4 or 5, and I feel like the highest I've ever rated one was like 3.5 stars, which is not great. And he's just not an author that I enjoy. But this one, it takes the cake for my hatred, because it felt like a weird fever dream that didn't go anywhere. It was odd. And when I finished this book, I understood later on that this was written as like, if you think I got it right, is like magazine submissions, and that's why it kind of felt all over the place, and like the chapters didn't feel super connected, and you don't know why anything is happening, and it's all about vibes, and I didn't really like the vibes, nor would I ever like a book that is purely vibes, but I didn't even like those, and it just felt so weird and confusing and no redemption value whatsoever. The story just felt all over the place. Stephen King's writing style, I don't like. In general, I don't like the writing style. And he just writes so frantically. Everything is all over the place. It doesn't feel like he actually understands how things weave together, or he just sits down and writes. And I don't like that kind of thing. And, he is like the one guy that like is symbolic of that writing style. And if you like that style, Stephen King's your guy. If you like the more meticulously plotted out and everything is there for a reason, then you'll hate this kind of thing. And I'm very much in that category, and I hate this kind of thing. Then next up is Stormfront by Jim Butcher. This is book 1 of the Dresden Files. Now, I don't hate Dresden Files. In fact, I quite like some of the Dresden Files books. Overall, I have a negative impression of Dresden Files, as I read so many of them that I think I read like 12, where I got what it was trying to tell me. I got the feeling of the books, and I gave it an earnest try, and it never really brought it over the top. But while the series, I felt like reached to a crescendo several books in terms of how well written they were, and it felt like you could enjoy them, the first book is a jumbled mess, I tell you. I mean, it's so bad that the author himself will tell you not to read it. And that's when you know it's bad. When the author of a large series says, don't read book 1. In fact, don't even read book 2. Start at book 3. And you'll like me a lot more. And, I appreciate the self-realization by Mr. Butcher to say that these things are kind of trash and they're not symbolic of later on. But, these stories about this, this wizard detective, and that's a cool concept. A modern day wizard detective. Now, not super my thing. I don't normally love kind of modern day urban fantasy type stories, but I can dig them. I've liked some, but it was like it had this promise of like these really cool bad guys and this kind of gritty noir type detective, and what I got was this kind of cringy detective that had the worst parts of noir kind of built up into this character. I don't have anything to like about this character yet, so all the cringy things really stand out more than they do in the other books, because there's no positive traits that I can associate with this character. And then the bad guy is just like a standard mob villain, where it's not even like a monster. It's just like a bad guy. And there's some, creepy paranormal stuff going on in it, but it's not like the hero of the story at all. These things get fixed later on. you know, as the books get tremendously better. But yeah, book 1, Stormfront, skip it. Move straight on to book 3, just like the author says. Number 5 is The Goblin Empire, The Goblin Emperor by Katherine Addison. I don't think that's her real name. I don't know her real name, but I think that's what she wrote it as. But I'm just going to say Katherine Addison because that's what it says in the book. And yeah, Goblin Emperor, man, this was bad. Just unqualified bad. You know, I really thought I was going to like it because it was billed as me as like, oh, it's like a day in the life of like an emperor, living an emperor's life and, you know, weaving through the politics of it. And yeah, that's right up my alley. But what I got was a book that's not really a fantasy book. It's about this emperor who is a goblin, but the only reason you know he's a goblin is because they say he's a goblin. He doesn't have any traits of a goblin. There's nothing special he can do. Everybody in this book is just called something, and then you're just like, oh, it's a fantasy book now. No, if you just said he was human, and he was like French or something, it wouldn't be a fantasy book. You would never know. You could like sub out the word goblin for French, or any nationality, or anything character trait about somebody, and you would have the exact same book. You know, these repetitive phrases, the super formal court speak is cool on like one page, and then you're like, oh wow, this never stops. Oh, wow, you're going to use these words over and over and over again. You're going to literally use the word serenity to refer to this emperor like 1,000 times. And that's hard to stomach. And then when nothing happens in the story, truly nothing happens. It's a day in the life of an emperor that goes through no problems. It's just like, oh, here's life as an emperor. Everything takes place in this throne room. That's it. Nothing big. And then one big thing happens, and you're like, oh, it got interesting. Something major happened. Then like 2 pages later, it gets resolved. And then the book ends with him like building a bridge. And a very fitting ending, because that's the feeling it gave me while reading this thing. And yeah, I think the people that like this are like the people that are really into slice of life type of stories. And I can like slice of life, but there's got to be other things too that pull me in. That can't be like the only thing in the story. Otherwise, I'll hate it. Like this one. Okay, number 4 is Gideon the Ninth. This is book 1 of the Locked Tomb series by Tamsin Muir. And yeah, so I started off really liking this book. Popped it open. It's got this awesome on another planet feel to it. You know, kind of digging the type of characters we are. And then at like, I don't know, a sixth of the way through the book, they're like, nope, no more of the mystery of that. We're going to go do a murder mystery story. And the main character, you're going to be the most annoying, angsty teenager that I've ever read about, which is horrible. You're going to be sarcastic and edgy with every single utterance of your mouth is going to be like that. And I hate that kind of thing. I've got a handful of years before my kids become teenagers and they start talking like that. And I want to preserve the sanity that I have right now. So going back and reading something like Gideon the Ninth is painful. It's painful. And it's personally painful because it's like, Matt, this is your life. This is what your life will be eventually. And that sucks. That sucks big time. Because yeah, I don't want any of that sitting in my life. And, but check in a handful of years and you're going to see the misery that I'm in, because it's just going to be like I'm reading Gideon the Ninth every day. Number 3 is The Burning God by R.F. Kuang. This is the final book in the Poppy War trilogy. And God, this was a mess. This was so bad. You know, each of these books just got worse and worse as they went along. I thought the first book was decent. But man, it got so bad. In general, I hate stories where I hate the main character when it's told from a single POV perspective. How could you like that sort of thing? And the main character is just a horrific person. And I like bad people in my stories. Mostly I like bad people in my third-person perspective stories, so I don't have to stay in their head the entire time. But this is a horrible person who is just mimicking a real-life horrible person. And I already know about that person. I already know about the historical time period here. So it just felt like a very, very badly written historical book. And I didn't want to read anything about it. You know, there's so many interesting characters in this book that we just get neglected because we spent so much time with this horrible main character. You know, I feel like the resolution to this story was really bad. I felt like the twists and turns with the fantasy here were were very, very badly written to be nice. And it just felt like a ripoff story of history. And like, why did this need to be written? What's the point of this story when I could just go read any large handful of historical books about this time period and get a much better perspective about things, much better written, much better characters, much more compelling. And that could have been in like historical version, and it would have been more compelling and interesting than it was in this supposedly interesting, fiction book. And yeah, stay away from everything involving the Poppy War series, as good as the first book is. Number 2 on this list was number 1 last year, and it is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. This is book 1 of the Broken Earth series. Maybe the other ones get worse. I don't know, because I stopped at book 1. But yeah, this is here because of how hyped up this series is. According to the awards, this is like one of the greatest books ever written. Or certainly one of the best series ever written, because it's the only series to ever win the Hugo Awards all 3 years. And so every single book won the best Hugo for that year, which is insane to me because these are horrifically written. It's just, and by horrifically written, I mean, the plot is not great. The characters are atrocious. The plot, like the twist that happens in the story, is god-awful. The use of second-person perspective in a third of the story is a choice. That's certainly a choice. I think there's a reason that nobody else makes that choice, because it's not a good way to write books. Overall, a horrific experience that seems to take pleasure in bad things happening to people, and then not allowing those characters to decompress from these bad moments at all. They just kind of move on with it. And yeah, it is all over the place. It's like it's trying to be so cool and hip, and it's not those things. And the writing style itself is like this weird thing where you read it and like there's italics and bold and large script all over the place, because it felt like the author doesn't know how to convey these emotions without changing up the formatting of the story, where great authors can convey those things the way every other author in history has ever written. And it just shows a lack of strength as a writer, and it continues to confound me how universally loved this book and this series are. And number 1 is new to this list, and it is maybe like the oldest classic there is in fantasy, and it is Conan the Barbarian by Robert D. Howard. And not any particular book here, because I read several of the short stories. I read a short story collection, did not finish the collection because I hated it so much, but I read like 6 or 7 of these short stories, which is all really what Conan is. And it is horrendous, people. I get partially why it's horrendous is that it was written back well before Lord of the Rings was written. So this is written back in like the 30s, and some of them stretched out into like the 40s and 50s, but a lot of the ones I read were written back in the 30s. And, I should give grace to an author for writing so far back and saying, oh, because I am an expert reviewer and this is the way that I would have perceived things if I had read it back in the 1930s and I was 110 years old. But I'm not that kind of person. I'm not a professional reviewer. I'm hardly an amateur reviewer. I'm just a guy with a camera that presses record every now and then. So I can't put myself in the head of those kind of people. I'm not smart enough for that. I don't have the history for that. When I read books, I read them right now, and with the perspective of somebody living right now. And, they are sexist, they're racist, and a lot of books I read right now are sexist and racist, and that's okay. It just felt like it was used here for no greater purpose. And it didn't make me enjoy the characters or the story more. It just felt like it was there because that's what people felt like then. But there's no real purpose for it. Conan is a horrifically written character in every sense of the word. He's not explained at all as a character. It's just like, here is big, hulky barbarian man, and he will kill this person. And that sucks. It's boring and horrific writing. Conan fans also are the worst. If you like Conan, you suck. Like, I'm just kidding. I'm sure there's tons of people that love Conan that are awesome people. Maybe I have some friends that love Conan. But I will say that Conan harbors like the worst element in booktube. And again, a lot of people don't have that love Conan. But there are a lot of people that love Conan that are this like Andrew Tate type, where it's like, men are so far superior to women, they're the strongest, they're the best, and here's what a real man, only eats red meat. They all they do is go to the gym and work out and try to get chicks, and anything other than that is the worst of sins. Because I've talked trash about a lot of books on my channel. It's just what I do. And I talk trash on Conan, and like every day, like currently, go look at the video. You'll see recent comments of people just like saying the most hateful things towards me. And I don't care. I actually think it's funny. In fact, I like when people write hateful comments on my page, like I pin them. I actually get a kick out of somebody getting so upset at me that they would think that they're going to hurt my feelings or something by going online and writing comments about me. Like I work in politics. My job is like to piss off people and dealing with pissed off people. So like that's never going to get under my skin. It's very funny though, and does just like symbolize like how ratchet of people that a lot of the Conan fans are. But again, if you love Conan, maybe it's not you, but look around. Maybe the people behind you are. So that is it for me. Thank you so much for watching. In the comments, let me know what your least favorite popular fantasy books are. I'd be interested to know. So thank you so much. And as always, happy reading to you. Thanks again to all my patrons, with a special shout out to my Ascendant tier and Librarian tier patrons: Amy, Anna G, CJ, Doust, Darren, JD, Jonathan, Nathan T, Nev's Book Channel, 𝗟𝗏𝗀, Ron Reich, Russell, Ryan L, Slay, Sydney Baker, Tahir, Zion, Anna, Andra, Blair, Brock, Evan, Harry W, Joe UK, Kat Mick, Michael Sugarman, Sky, and Tyler. Thanks for sticking to the end of this video, and if you want to watch some more content from my channel, click over here and I've got some good videos for you. Thanks so much.